Hey, it's Dave with House Flipping Spreadsheet, and this is a case study on how to estimate repair costs for your rehab projects. In my previous video case study, I walked you through how I analyzed the numbers of my very first flip. In that case study, I had a budget of $40,000 for the repairs on the property. Now in this case study, I want to walk you through the scope of work and discuss how I came up with my rehab budget for the project. So just as a refresher, here's a few pictures of the property. The structure itself was fine, and by fine I mean there were no major foundation issues or anything like that, but it did need a new roof, new windows and exterior doors, and exterior painting and some new landscaping on the exterior. Now in the interior of the property, it was a little dirty and there were some holes in the walls, but for the most part, the property was just needing a cosmetic rehab, so new bathrooms, painting the interiors, installing new hardwood flooring in the kitchen, installing new carpet in the bedrooms and the living rooms, and then installing new light fixtures throughout the property. So that's a quick overview of the scope of work of the property. Let's open up our repair estimator and start plugging in some numbers to see how much we budget for our repairs. So now I have our repair estimator tool open, which is pre-built with a database of 24 categories which each have a list of common repairs and unit prices. The pricing in the estimator is really based upon my experience estimating costs here in Kansas City, which is close to the national average. Now, if you're going to be on the East Coast or the West Coast in urban areas working on high-end flips, your pricing will likely be much higher. So it's always best to review our pricing that we have in our database and adjust the pricing to your specific market and the quality of finishes that you'll be installing in your rehabs. Okay, so let's get started. So the very first category that we have in our repair estimator is general conditions. So general conditions are repair items that aren't associated with any particular trade or any particular category. So you can see we've got dumpster rental here, we've got miscellaneous tools and materials, turning on utilities, project management, architectural fees, engineering fees, material deliveries, final cleaning, stuff like that. So that's kind of all of the miscellaneous items that you might have on the project that's not associated with any of the categories like demolition, roofing, siding, anything like that. So typically on a rehab, you'll at least have one dumpster. So generally up front when you're demolishing all of the materials, tearing out the carpet, tearing out the kitchen cabinets, the bathrooms, anything like that, you're going to need a dumpster on site to basically take all that debris and get rid of it. So generally I'll have a dumpster on site, and depending on where you're at, that can be as little as $300 all the way up to $500+, all depending on the dump fees that your dumpster companies charge in your local area. So I'm just going to plug in $400 here for our dumpster, and one dumpster should cover it, unless your house has a whole bunch of furniture and stuff that you're getting rid of. One dumpster should cover it there. And then otherwise I'm just going to plug in final cleaning here. So we might have a cleaning company come into the property and clean out the property for maybe 8 hours, so 2 people for 4 hours, basically half a day, $160 should cover us for final cleaning. So other than that, I'm not going to plug anything else in here for general conditions. We've got a dumpster and we've got final cleaning. Let's move on to our next category, which is going to be demolition. So you can see we've got a bunch of different items in here. You can basically take it off by the room, so you could input the number of square footage for a typical room and it'll multiply out by your unit price over here. Same thing for your bathrooms, your kitchens. If you're tearing down an entire building structure, you can plug that in here as well. But generally what I do is I just estimate it based upon the number of man hours that I think it's going to take. So in this property, we're just tearing out the carpet, we're tearing out the bathrooms, tearing out the doors on the interior of the property, and I think it's going to take 3 guys 2 days to get this done. So 3 guys working 8-hour shifts, so that's 24 hours a day times 2, which is 48 hours. 48 hours times $20 an hour is $960. So that should cover us for having 3 guys go into the house and tearing out all the materials and then throwing it in our dumpster that we've got sitting in the driveway. So that's generally what I do to estimate demolition. I don't go through and try to estimate each individual item or anything like that. It's more of a man-hour calculation on how long I think it's going to take, and then multiplying that by a man-hour rate of 20 bucks per hour. So we've got demolition estimated now. As I mentioned before, there's no real structural issues or anything like that, so that's where structural concrete would come into play if there's any kind of foundation repairs or issues. Concrete and flat work is really for sidewalks. So on this property, the driveway wasn't in great shape, but the neighborhood's not that high end, and honestly we didn't necessarily need to replace the driveway, so we just left it as is. Masonry would be for if you've got any kind of brick issues, or maybe you're putting a new veneer on the property, but we don't have anything like that on the property. The siding on this house was actually in decent shape, so it just had plywood siding, but it did need painting. So siding is if you're going to be replacing the siding on the property and putting new siding on. We didn't have that on this particular project, but we did have some decking and patios. So what you'll notice in some of those pictures that we had was the deck was in pretty bad shape, but the structure of the deck was fine, and we could actually keep the structure. So basically the posts, the beams, the joists of the deck were in good shape, but we wanted to replace the decking there. So what I'm going to plug in is we've got an existing deck, replace the decking. So this deck was about 10 feet by maybe 15 feet, so that's 150 square feet. 150 square feet times $7, so we've got $5 in labor and $2 there in materials, so that's about $1,000 for a budget for that deck. So I think looking back at it, I think it ended up being around $1,100 to $1,200 to get that done from our contractor, so we're pretty close on that budget for the decking. So let's move on to the next item there, which is going to be our roofing. So again, if you looked back at the pictures, whoops, clicked on the wrong one there. If you look back at our pictures, you can tell that the roof is in really bad shape. So we assume that we're going to need to replace the roof with a new roof, and we're going to use an architectural shingle. So you've got a couple different options here. You've got 3-tab, which is generally the cheaper option. It's a little bit cheaper on the material side, and then you've got an architectural shingle, which is a little bit prettier from a visual and aesthetic standpoint, and it's also just a better grade and quality, so it should last longer than a 3-tab shingle. So the way that you measure a roof is generally you'll want to figure out what the footprint of the property is. So the footprint meaning the area of the actual house. So you'll go around the perimeter of the house, you'll calculate what the overall area of the footprint of the building is, and then you will use that to calculate the size of the roof. So generally you'll want to multiply it by 1.25 is generally a good rule of thumb. That'll help you account for all of the slope for one. You got to account for the slope on the roof, but then it'll account for any kind of overhangs and stuff like that. So this property was about 1,500 square feet, and roofs are measured in squares. So 1 square is equal to 10 by 10 square feet, which is 100 square feet. So 1 square is equal to 100 square feet. Since it's 1,500 square foot property, 1,500 divided by 100 is 15 squares. And then let's say 15 times 1.25. Let's just use our calculator here. 15 times 1.25, 18.75 squares. So let's just plug in 19 squares here. So 19 times our budget of about $265 a square is equal to $5,000 over here. So that was about what we paid. In fact, I think we might have paid less than that. I think it was more like $4,800. So we're actually a little bit over budget of what we paid, but that's a decent budget there for roofing. So again, you want to find out how many squares of roofing you're going to need, which is 100 square feet per square. and then multiply that by 1.25 just kind of to factor in the slope and overhangs and stuff like that, and then that should give you a good quantity for what the squares will be, and then you can use that to calculate your roof budget there. Exterior doors and windows. So the property had old aluminum windows on the property, and then we also wanted to replace the exterior doors, so the front entry door, but then we also wanted to install a new patio door. It had an old glass aluminum slider, so we wanted to install a new patio door there, and then a new entry door into the garage. So we've got 2 steel entry doors and a patio door here. And then we'll also want to do the door hardware. So we've got 3 doors that need door hardware. So we've got 3 doors at $25 a set, and then the doors up here, steel entry doors, we've got $250 for material per each steel entry door, and then $500 for that French patio door. So you can actually find doors for cheaper than that. Steel entry doors, you could probably find a cheap one for $150. But if you're looking for a real nice high quality one, it could go up to $400 or $500. And then the same thing with the French patio door. I think we ended up buying one for about $400, but those can go all the way up to $1,000 each. So it all depends on what type of products you're installing in your property, but those are the budgets that should cover us for a steel entry door and a patio door. And then windows wise, there were about 11 windows that needed to be replaced on the property. So we're just going to plug in a budget of $175 for materials and then $75 for install, which is about $250 for a replacement vinyl window. And we're not going to waste our time going through the property and measuring all the windows just yet. We're just going to plug in basically a lump sum of $250 here for each window, and then we're going to have the contractor go through and measure all those windows to figure out the exact sizes and stuff like that. So that's going to be on the contractor. We won't waste our time with that, but we do want to make sure we plug in a nice budget for the windows to make sure we have that covered. So we've got about $3,000 in there for the 11 windows on the property. Garage doors. So our garage doors also needed to be replaced. So it's got some old garage doors that we want to freshen up with some new white doors. So we've got a couple different options here. This is just for a door without an operator. So you've just got the door panel itself, but then we'll also want to install an automatic operator that's going to be installed on the property so they can open up the doors with their remote control and stuff like that. So we've got, looks like nearly $700 each or $800 each for the garage doors there to have new doors installed on the property. Now landscaping, a lot of times I won't waste my time going through a detailed list, so you will see that we have a detailed itemized list of all of the different landscaping materials for the property. What I usually do is I'll just plug in a lump sum number here. So I'll just say I think we will need about $300 in materials. That should buy us maybe 8 shrubs and the materials for the landscaping beds, and that should cover us. So instead of going through a detailed list and trying to think about all of the shrubs and flowers and everything like that, I'll just plug in a lump sum budget, and then I'll manage my design to that budget. So I'll just know when I go to purchase my landscaping materials, I have $300 budgeted for the materials, and we've got $250 in labor. Now on this property, I ended up doing the landscaping myself. So one thing you'll notice is we've got this DIY column over here on the left hand side. So if you're planning on doing some of the work yourself, you can plug in an X over here in the DIY column, and what that's going to do is it's going to remove the labor from the labor column. So you can see we've got DIY savings of $250. So if we do this work ourselves, we're going to save $250 on the labor. So that can be a way for you to analyze whether it's worth doing the work yourself. I'll show you how that gets plugged into our analyzer later, but you can analyze to see how your DIY budget compares to if you sub it out. So I'm going to allocate that one as a DIY item that I'm going to do the work myself. Miscellaneous exterior items. So this is going to be like your mailbox, your your new address number if you want to do that, and then shutters on the property. So we're going to plug in a new mailbox, new address number, and then we're going to install new shutters. So one of the funny things about this house was, what we didn't know was there were bats hiding behind the shutters. So when we went to remove the shutters, we found a family of bats living behind the shutters, which was a pretty scary deal there, but we ended up just removing the shutters. They flew away and went who knows where, but thankfully they didn't go inside the house. But that was something that we ran into that was unexpected, was we had bats hiding behind the existing shutters. So other than that, that's all we're going to do to the exterior of the property. Now we'll move on to framing and drywall. So one of the things on this property that we noticed when we were walking it was this entire neighborhood, the contractor used aluminum wiring to wire all the houses. Now there's a couple different things that you can do when you find aluminum wiring. You can either rewire the property, or you can pigtail the wiring, which is a cheaper way to just basically replace the outlets and connect it to the existing aluminum wiring. Now we decided to completely replace all the wiring throughout the property. Now when you do that, you have to remove some drywall. So that was something that we had to include in our budget. There were also some miscellaneous areas where somebody had punched holes in the wall. So what I would do there is I would just include kind of an allowance or a budget for drywall. So you could say, $1,000 for the drywall. That'll have a guy come into the house maybe for a week or so and just go through and just patch. So that's what I would do. Instead of trying to quantify everything, you would just plug in an allowance there. Or maybe you would say, we've got a drywaller that's going to come in the house for 40 hours, and he's just going to go through and he's going to do patching. Now you can see I've got $1,000 per hour in here. Let's reduce that to, let's call it $30 an hour. So now you've got 40 times $30 an hour for $1,200. So that's how I would probably do drywall patching, is do it either by a man hour or just kind of plug in an allowance to account for some kind of drywall cost to patch walls and stuff like that. So we've got $1,200 in there for drywall patching. Other than that, we did end up texturing the walls too. In this one, the house, I think that might kind of be included in this $1,200. But basically we just, instead of trying to patch all of the drywall holes and all of the damage, we ended up patching them, but then also texturing the walls to kind of hide some of that we had going on throughout the property. So I would assume that 40 hours kind of includes some of that. 40 hours is a long time to have a drywaller in a house, so I would just assume that this drywall patching here is drywall patching and texturing walls. Okay. Next we have cabinets and countertops. So in the kitchen, what we ended up doing was the cabinets were in decent shape, but the doors were missing on a couple of locations. So we actually kept the cabinets, but we needed to buy replacement cabinet doors. So I believe there were 3 doors that we needed to have bought and replaced, and unfortunately those ended up being quite a bit more expensive than we initially anticipated. So we actually ended up going to a local millwork shop, and I think those were $150 each for those doors to match the existing cabinet doors. So we've got basically 3 doors there, $150 each. That multiplies out to about $600 for those cabinet doors. And then we installed new countertops. So it was a pretty small kitchen. I think there was only around 15 lineal feet of cabinetry, base cabinetry. Those are typically about 2 feet wide. 15 lineal feet times 2 is about 30 square feet of countertops, and $55 a square foot is a decent budget number. You could definitely get granite countertops for probably the $35 to $40 range, so I'm actually just going to decrease that to $45. And then another thing you need to consider is usually the countertop company will install the kitchen sink bowls. So we've got a stainless undermount sink bowl there, and usually that's an upcharge of maybe 200 to 300 bucks for them to do that. Otherwise, we've got our bathroom vanities. So this one will also be something that is going to vary. You can definitely buy vanity cabinets for pretty cheap. So there's vanity cabinet sets at Lowe's and Home Depot that you could probably get for $250 to $300. It even comes with a mirror and the countertop included. But really, for this type of property, it was about a 4-foot wide vanity cabinet in each bathroom. So we included about $500 for our budget, which should definitely get us a decent quality vanity cabinet and countertop. If you're doing something more custom, you could easily spend, $1,000 plus for a vanity. But for the level of finishes that we're doing on this house, 500 bucks for each bathroom should have us covered. Doors and trim. So throughout the house, they had some old hollow core doors that were pretty beat up. There were punches in the doors and holes in the doors that needed to be replaced. So we needed to install new pre-hung doors throughout the property. Now, doors, you can usually buy those from $75 up to maybe $100 for hollow core doors. If you're looking for more of a solid core wood door, you're probably going to be paying $100 to $200 each for those doors. So we've got $80 in here for our budget, and then $75 to have those installed by our contractor for each door. And then we also need to add in the doorknobs. So each door needs doorknobs, and we've got $15 in here. You can definitely find some for cheaper than that. You could probably get them for $10 or maybe even less, but the privacy latches, the ones that have the locks on them, generally you're going to pay around 15 bucks. So we've got $15 in there as a budget. You might be able to find something cheaper. I've found Amazon's a good place to find doorknobs, so if you're looking for alternatives to buy materials, you can look on Amazon, and generally they'll have some pretty cheap alternatives from the big box stores. Otherwise, wood base. So a lot of times in these old houses, the wood base is going to be pretty banged up. Instead of replacing all the base throughout the house, sometimes I'll just plug in an allowance. So maybe we've got 100 lineal feet that need to be replaced. So sometimes I'll just plug in just a budget number in case we need to replace some base throughout the property. Other than that, now one of the things that we did was some wainscoting. So I actually installed that in the interior. So this is something that I did in the main entryway, and I actually did that myself. So I'm just going to plug in an X there, so you can see I've got $7.50 for materials, which is 120 bucks, and I'm only saved about 150 bucks doing this myself. So in the scheme of things, I probably should have just had the contractor do it, but I did it, and I'll show you some pictures of that. And other than that, we did have some wood iron balusters. There was about 10 lineal feet of, whoops, didn't plug that in the right spot. 10 lineal feet of iron balusters, so that's just those metal balusters that you see in the railing. And that was really about it from the doors and trims perspective. Carpet and resilient flooring. So resilient flooring is just like vinyl tile. We didn't have any vinyl tile, but we did install carpet throughout the living rooms, the bedrooms, and the basement area, and that was about 1,000 square feet. And honestly, $275 for carpet is kind of expensive, especially for this level of price range that we were in. I think we got it for about $2 for the carpet and the carpet pad to have that installed on the property. So let's use the economy grade here, which is about $2,000 for the carpet. And then if we move on to hardwood flooring, so what we wanted to do was install new hardwood flooring in the kitchen area. So I think this was kind of a bamboo floor is what we ended up buying. $4 a square foot, pretty high end. Actually, I think we bought this for around $2 to $2.50 a square foot. and there was about 300 square feet of hardwood flooring. Now, I decided to take on this task myself, so I actually installed the hardwood flooring on this property. So I'm going to put an X in the DIY column, so it looks like I saved around $900 by doing that work myself. And then another thing to consider is the shoe moldings, so that can add up on the hardwood flooring as well. So the shoe molding is just that little piece of trim that you want to cover up the edging around the wood base. So there's probably about 60 lineal feet of shoe molding that we installed in the property, and I did that myself as well. So that's a quick budget for hardwood flooring. Let's go over to tiling. So tiling, one of the things that we did was a kitchen backsplash. So we kept the cabinets, but we wanted to freshen up with a nice tile backsplash. Now personally, I think the tile backsplash that we ended up using looks kind of tacky at this point, but back in the day, back in 2011, it was glass tile backsplashes were kind of in. But anyways, the tile was probably about $10 to $15 a square foot. And I ended up installing that tiling myself, so I saved about $300 to install that tile myself on the backsplash. Ended up having the contractor do the rest of the tiling on the house, so we had some tile in the bathrooms, and then we had some tile in the entryway. So in the showers, we had shower tile in a little 3x3 shower, which was about 5 feet tall. So that's about 50 square feet of shower tile in there. And then we had a tub, which is 3x5. So that is about, 55 square feet there. So overall, we had about 100 square feet of tile in our 3x3 shower and our 3x5 bathroom tub. And so we've got $5 a square foot in there for that, and $6 for material. So, $6 for shower tile is going to be pretty expensive just for the tile, but this is also going to include the tile backer board. So that's something that you should consider in that budget price. Is it's not just for the tile materials, it's also for the backer board, it's also for the grout, the mortar for the tile, and stuff like that. So we've got about $600 in material, and we've got $500 in labor, so about $1,100 just for the vertical tile. So that's the shower tile there. But we've also got bathroom tile on the floor. So the main hall bathroom was about 5 feet wide by about 6 or 7 feet long, so that's about 30 square feet. And then the other bathroom was pretty small, so it was only probably another 20 square feet. So we've got 50 square feet there. But we've also got floor tile in the entry, which was about 4 square feet by 8 square feet. And then we've got a budget of $4 a square foot, and then about $5 per square foot for the floor tile in the bathrooms. So overall, our tiling, we've got about $2,400 budgeted for that for our contractor. Painting. So this is going to include the exterior painting and the interior painting on the property. So generally, what I'll use is just kind of a rule of thumb to estimate the exterior painting. So exterior painting, if you've got a 1,500 square foot house, generally it's going to be about $2 to $2.50 a square foot to paint the property. So let's do that here. Let's say 1,500 square feet, and let's input $2.50 there. So if we were to hire a contractor, 1,500 square feet, $2.50, that'd be about $3,700 for the painting. But I ended up doing this work myself, so let's plug that in. We saved about $3,700 there, but we still need to buy the painting materials. And to paint the entire exterior of the property, I think we've got about 20 gallons of paint. So 20 times 35 bucks a gallon is 700 bucks in materials. So we still got $700 in materials out there that we need to buy. I'll kind of do the same thing with interior painting. So again, there's just kind of a rule of thumb, about $2 a square foot for 1,500 square foot property. So if you plug in 1,500 square feet here, let's plug in $2. I did that work myself, so we actually don't need to even plug that in. But again, we've got about 25 gallons of paint. 25 gallons times 35 is $900. So we've got $900 in interior paint, about $700 in exterior paint. So we've still got about $1,600 in our budget for that, but we're saving around $6,000 by doing that work ourselves. And then the appliances. So we are going to be installing new appliances in the property. You can see we've got a list of different options here. We've got appliance packages, which include the fridge, the range, maybe a microwave hood, dishwasher, stuff like that. Or you can go through and do a detailed breakdown of the appliances down here. So you could just plug in an appliance package here, and you could just say 1 times 1,800. So we've got 1,800 bucks budgeted for our appliances. I'm going to increase that to $2,500, which should get us a nice stainless steel refrigerator, a range, and a microwave and a dishwasher. So we've got $2,500 allocated for our appliances here. And then another thing to consider is delivery. So some places charge a delivery fee. I think Lowe's and Home Depot provide that for free, but if not, you may want to plug that in here. Okay, so the next item is going to be plumbing. So on this property, the main plumbing items are going to be in our bathrooms, but then we're going to also be installing new kitchen faucets. The first thing you'll see is miscellaneous plumbing. So this is for maybe a hot water heater or any kind of plumbing rough-in. So if we were going to be repiping the property with new plumbing, you'd want to plug that in here. But we're reusing the existing plumbing piping on this property. It was a fairly new neighborhood built in the 80s, so they at least were using copper piping to supply all the piping throughout the property. So let's just move down to the kitchen. So we've got kitchen faucet fixture. So we'll want to install a new kitchen faucet fixture. It's going to kind of depend. You can buy a faucet fixture from $100 to $200. On this property, I think it was around $125. We also wanted to install a new garbage disposal. We'll need our contractor to actually hook up the dishwasher and also provide a water supply line. So we've got some budgets in there for the contractor to do that. And then in the bathrooms, we've got 2 bathroom faucet fixtures. We've got 1 shower stall, so just a little fiberglass shower stall, 3x3, and then we've got a fiberglass tub. And then we need a new shower head kit for each bathroom, and then 2 new toilets. So that should basically summarize all of our plumbing. Again, a lot of these are good budget numbers. You can definitely find stuff for cheaper and more expensive, but this should have you covered on an average basis, so you should be able to find something in this price range for average grade plumbing fixtures for your properties. HVAC, so the HVAC on the property was actually fairly new. We ended up paying about $250 to have somebody come out and tune up the air conditioning on the property, but other than that, we just installed a new programmable thermostat for the property. One thing I also forgot was you'll probably want to install all new grills and registers. This isn't necessarily something that your HVAC technician will do. Your contractor will probably take care of this, but you'll want to install new white supply air grills and registers throughout the property. Generally on a house that's 20 to 30 years old, they'll have some old registers that are going to be dirty. You may be able to just paint those, but I just assume that we'll be replacing those in the property. Electrical. So again, one thing I mentioned earlier was the property had aluminum wiring. So every house in this neighborhood actually had aluminum wiring installed, and it had an old electrical panel. So one of the things that we wanted to do was install a new 200 amp service to the property and rewire the property. So again, that wasn't necessary. We could have probably just pigtailed the aluminum wiring and replaced all the outlets throughout, but it was my first flip, wanted to do everything right and according to code, and make sure that we did everything right for whoever that was going to be buying the property. So we ended up rewiring the entire property, and generally I think rewiring a property, it's going to be about $3 a square foot. So let's just plug that in here. Let's say electrical rough-in, let's say per square foot, and let's say 1,500 square feet. You can see we've got $60 over here, which is obviously too much. $3 a square foot. So $1,500 times 3 is $4,500. Now we ended up getting a bid from a contractor, and this guy ended up working for me for quite a while. He would rewire all my houses for me, and I've never paid more than probably $4,000. And this is a kind of a smaller house, so I'm just going to plug in $2.50 here, and I think that was about what we ended up paying for the electrical rough-in and having the contractor go through and do all of the lighting throughout the property. So 1,500 square feet times $2.50 a square foot is about $3,700 for the electrical work on the property. So I think that should have us covered, but we still need to plug in our materials for the lighting. So lighting here, we've got a bunch of different lists of light fixtures. Since our contractor's installing this up here, we can actually delete the labor work that we have in the column there. Track pendant lighting, I'm not sure if we had that. Chandelier, definitely didn't have a chandelier, but we had 5 dome lights throughout the property, and then ceiling fans in the bedrooms, and then 2 vanity lights in the bathrooms, and then we did some can lighting, I believe, in the kitchen, so 4 can lights, and then exterior light fixtures on the front of and back of the property. So again, these are kind of average budgets here. You can definitely find some light fixtures for cheaper than that, but these should have you covered if you're just looking for an average budget that can get you a decent light fixture on your property. So now if we move on to our final option here, we have our miscellaneous items. So these are going to be like bathroom accessories, your towel bar, your toilet dispenser, your mirrors and stuff like that. So we've got 2 bathrooms here, and then that are going to need toilet paper bar, the toilet dispenser, and then also bathroom mirrors over the vanities. So again, sometimes those vanity sets will include a mirror, but we're adding in $70 here to install those bathroom mirrors, custom bathroom mirror in each of those bathrooms. And then window coverings, generally we won't install window coverings in the house. That's going to be something that's going to be on the homeowner to buy those window coverings for the property. So you can see our total budget for the property is $41,879. So you can see a breakdown up here at the top, which gives you a breakdown of all of the categories and where we're spending our money. You can see that because I'm doing the work, some of the work myself, I'm saving around $8,395. So that was one of the things with this property that I kind of got myself into a pickle with my rehab budget. I ended up needing to do some of the work myself just to make the deal work. So you know, that's generally not a good idea. Don't do eraser math on your projects. Don't try to adjust your numbers or adjust your situation just to make a deal work. Always assume that you're subbing out all of your work on your project, and then if you do want to go back in and DIY some work just to save some money or make some extra money on the deal, you can do that, but I would definitely not assume that you're going to be doing that up front. But you can see we've got a total budget of $41,000. We did have a general contractor, and he wasn't necessarily a general contractor. He was basically a contractor that was doing all the work himself, so he wasn't managing subs or anything like that. So all of these numbers that we have here really kind of include his wage and his profit in the deal. So we didn't need to plug in any kind of overhead and profit for a general contractor to manage our subs. As far as contingency is concerned, on this property, I think I plugged in about 5% in contingency, which again, if you're doing this for the first time, I would not recommend that. I spent 7 years as a commercial construction estimator, being employed as an estimator, so for the most part I'm pretty confident in what I'm doing as far as an estimate's concerned. So if you haven't done this, if you're not familiar with estimating rehab costs, I would probably include something more like 20% or more, but it all kind of depends on your comfort level with the scope of work on the project and the work that you have going on. So I'm just going to decrease that back down to about 5%. So you can see our budget now is $43,000 for the repairs. So I think in our initial estimate we included $40,000. So let's change this back to detailed. So you can see once we change it back to detailed, it should adjust our budget and use the detailed items that we have from the repair estimator. So you'll notice that it says 50,274. Well, that's not correct because that is our subbed budget. So we need to actually change this to DIY'd. If we change that to DIY'd, it's going to use our DIY'd budget. So this is including our DIY savings, I believe, of around $8,000. Since we're going to be DIYing some work, we need to change that setting to DIY'd. We also need to plug in our 5% here that we had for our contingency. So you'll notice now that my profit has actually dropped down to $16,000. So initially when we analyzed the deal, we were hoping for $20,000. Well, unfortunately, because the repair costs ended up being $3,000, almost $4,000 more than we initially anticipated, that comes directly out of my profit amount. So again, that's one of the important things about getting your rehab costs correct up front, is if you don't get it right, it only comes out of your bottom line. So if you don't get it right and you can't obviously resell the property for more than you anticipated, it comes automatically out of your bottom line and you end up making less money on the deal. So hopefully that was a good overview and educational for you. If you have any questions or anything like that on how to estimate rehab costs, please let me know. Thanks. Bye.